Astronomers may have just spotted a galaxy that looks surprisingly mature for its age, a barred spiral system shining from a time when the universe was barely out of its cosmic childhood. Not for 17. We will get to why that discovery has researchers rethinking how quickly galaxies settle into their familiar shapes. But first, let us get everything set up for today. Welcome to the Automated Daily Space News Edition, the podcast created by generative AI. Today is August 14th, 2026, and I am Trend Teller, here to guide you through the most interesting space and astronomy stories from roughly the last 24 hours. 2011. The goal is simple, a calm, clear look at what happened above our heads and why it matters, from the distant universe to the satellites orbiting Earth. We will touch on fresh results from the James Webb Space Telescope, a lively episode of solar activity that could paint the sky with auroras, new rocket launches building out global networks, and the lingering afterglow of this week's total solar eclipse. 3/9/16. Each story today is a quick, engaging snapshot rather than a deep technical dive. We will focus on the big picture, the discoveries, the missions, and the sky events you can actually go outside and see, all tied together in a way that hopefully makes sense whether you are a seasoned space fan or just curious about what is happening in the cosmos. Tomin 11, Tomin 13. So settle in, and let us start with that unusually grown-up galaxy from the early universe. This episode is brought to you by Lindy. Lindy is your ultimate AI assistant that proactively manages your inbox, meetings, and calendar so you can focus on what actually matters. Find the link in the episode notes. Our first story takes us to the very edge of what current telescopes can see. Astronomers working with the James Webb Space Telescope have reported what may be the most distant barred spiral galaxy ever discovered, shining from a time less than 1.2 billion years after the Big Bang. 17. In simple terms, this means that not long after the universe first lit up with stars and galaxies, at least one system had already grown a recognizable spiral structure with a central bar, something theories have usually expected to appear much later. That central bar is the elongated feature of stars and gas cutting through the middle of a spiral galaxy, and it plays a key role in how material moves inward and fuels star formation near the center. 17. Why is this such a big deal? In many computer models of galaxy growth, barred spirals are considered a kind of late-stage feature, emerging after a galaxy has had time to settle and rearrange its stars and gas. Seeing a barred spiral so early suggests that galaxies may have grown and reorganized themselves faster than expected, or that some of the physics in those models needs to be tweaked. It also hints that the processes that build up central black holes and inner star-forming regions were already well underway when the universe was only a small fraction of its current age. 17. As more of these very distant galaxies are found and studied, astronomers will compare them with local spirals like our Milky Way, looking for patterns that tie the early, rapid growth of structure to the familiar shapes we see around us today. For the wider community, this is a reminder of what James Webb was built to do, push our view of cosmic history further back and in finer detail than any previous telescope. 17. Each new extreme object it reveals, whether it is a barred spiral, a compact starburst, or a quietly evolving system, helps refine our story of how the universe went from a nearly uniform sea of matter to the rich tapestry of galaxies we see now. And if barred spirals are already showing up at these early times, we may soon be talking about a new timeline for when the cosmos started looking recognizably galactic. From the farthest reaches of the universe, we turn to our own star, which has had an active day. Space weather monitors and observers reported that a filament, essentially a great rope of solar material threaded by magnetic fields, lifted off the sun's surface near sunspot region, AR 4507, earlier today. 16. Around the same time frame, solar flare activity stepped up from very low to low, with 9 recorded events over the past day, including a C4.1 flare from sunspot region, AR 4503, in the southwest part of the solar disk at 7001 UTC on August 4.7 ton 11. 16, while a C-class flare is relatively mod. Est on the solar scale, it stands out because it broke a streak of weaker B-class flares and signals that the sun's magnetic environment is currently restless. 16. The filament eruption is especially interesting because those structures can sometimes hurl solar plasma into space as part of a coronal mass ejection. 16 Tection. Analysts are still working to determine whether any part of this particular eruption is heading toward Earth. But even without a strong directed blast, the ongoing solar wind flowing from a coronal hole is expected to bring G1 level geomagnetic storms. A 6 text. G1 is the lowest rung on the standard geomagnetic storm scale, yet it is strong enough to produce auroras closer to mid-latitudes than usual and cause minor effects on high-frequency radio and some satellite operations. DSSSSSSS. For anyone under dark skies at higher latitudes over the next day or so, this combination of filament eruption and elevated solar wind is worth watching. Unleavened SSSS. If conditions line up, curtains and arcs of aurora could appear, sometimes with subtle changes in color and shape as the solar particles interact with Earth's atmosphere. For satellite operators and power grid managers, today's solar news is a gentle nudge to stay alert, as even small storms can add noise to their systems. And for the rest of us, it is a reminder that the sun is not a static light bulb, but a dynamic, magnetic star whose moods can reach across space to touch our planet. This week's total solar eclipse continues to generate striking imagery, and two different perspectives have been singled out today. NASA's astronomy picture of the day features a photograph taken from Greenland during the August 12 total solar eclipse, showing the sun's delicate corona gleaming around the dark disk of the moon and a fleeting diamond ring effect just as totality began. In that event, the moon's shadow carved a path starting in the Arctic Ocean and sweeping across parts of Greenland, Iceland, the Atlantic, Portugal, and northern Spain, offering viewers along the narrow track a rare chance to experience. Daytime turning to night. 3:12. Millions more across Europe saw a partial eclipse, watching the sun take on a crescent shape as the moon covered only part of its face. 12. Complementing that ground-based view, Space.com's space photo of the day for August 14 showcases a moment when the International Space Station passed directly in front of the sun during the same eclipse. 9:10. Capturing this required precise timing, the ISS orbits Earth at high speed, and its silhouetted transit across the solar disk lasts only a fraction of a second. In the featured image, the station appears as a tiny but recognizable shape against the dimmed solar surface, a stark reminder that while the sun, moon, and Earth align in their age-old dance, human hardware is now part of the scene. 9:10. Taken together, these eclipse images underscore how many layers of activity are now woven into what might once have been viewed as a purely natural spectacle. Not 30, 9, Talv, S. Tar, 2014. The path of totality is still governed by celestial mechanics, but in that shadowed corridor you find not only awestruck observers on the ground, but also orbiting laboratories and cameras pointed both inward and outward. For many people, this week's eclipse was their first chance to see the corona with the naked eye. For scientists, the well-planned observations will feed into studies of the sun's outer atmosphere, the dynamics of prominences and coronal holes, and the behavior of Earth's own atmosphere under sudden darkness. And for the public, images like these help keep eclipses in the cultural spotlight, building interest in future events and in the broader story of how our planet moves in the solar system. Back closer to Earth, launch pads have been busy. Early this morning, SpaceX conducted the Starlink 10-24 mission from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, sending 29 broadband internet satellites into low Earth orbit. .7's liftoff occurred at 5:30 NAM Eastern Time, with the rocket following a northeasterly trajectory, and payload deployment was confirmed about an hour later. 7. This flight marked SpaceX's 37th dedicated Starlink mission of the year and pushed the total number of Starlink satellites launched in 2026 to 1,002, highlighting the rapid pace at which the company is building out its megaconstellation. The booster that carried the stack of satellites, designated B-1080, was flying for the 26th time, having previously supported missions ranging from commercial crew flights to cargo runs to the International Space Station. 7's. About 8.5 minutes after liftoff, it touched down on the drone ship, just read the instructions, stationed in the Atlantic Ocean, marking the 157th landing on that particular vessel and the 59th booster landing overall for SpaceX. 7.8th booster landing overall for SpaceX. Significant because they show how orbital launch is gradually shifting from a model of single-use hardware to one where rockets are routinely flown multiple times, reducing cost and potentially increasing access to space. SpaceX was not the only launch story on the radar today. Tracking sites list a GPS-3 SVO9 satellite, part of the modernized Global Positioning System fleet, associated with a Falcon 9 Block 5 launch from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, reflecting the ongoing upgrades to the navigation infrastructure that underpins everything from smartphone maps to aviation routing. Meanwhile, public launch schedules have been updated with test flights and classified missions planned later this month and beyond, including an Electron launch from Rocket Labs. New Zealand's sight and developments around new vehicles, such as Landspace's Juka 3 and CASC's Long March 12A.44825. While those flights are not all happening today, their shifting dates and no earlier than statuses give a sense of how dynamic the global launch calendar has become. For listeners, the key takeaway is that we are living through a period where orbital launches, once rare headline events, are now frequent milestones in a broader, steadily growing space economy. If you prefer to experience space by looking up rather than reading launch manifests, the sky has plenty to offer over the next couple of nights. NASA's August What's Up? Guide and independent astronomy outlets are drawing attention to Venus, which reaches its greatest eastern elongation between August 14 and 16.2 to 11 to 13. This is the point at which Venus appears farthest from the sun in our evening sky, making it an especially bright and easy target low in the west after sunset. Through a small telescope, it shows a half-lit phase, reminiscent of a tiny, off-white crescent moon, while to the naked eye, it simply blazes brighter than any star nearby. 2Eth Sky notes that Venus shines prominently after sunset on August 14 and 15, with the crescent moon close by, creating a striking pairing in the evening sky. 11.com's Sky. This week column adds that Venus, at the time of greatest elongation around 2 a.m. Eastern on the 14th, stands about 46 degrees from the sun in celestial longitude and will appear just above and to the left of the waxing crescent moon as darkness falls. 13. These alignments are easy, low-effort sights. You do not need special equipment, only a relatively clear western horizon and a few minutes outside after sunset. At the same time, the Perseid meteor shower, which peaked in the early hours of August 13 under a dark new moon, still offers elevated activity for those under clear skies. 2:15 social media and skywatching sites have been buzzing about how unusual this week has been, with some posts highlighting a rare convergence of a six-planet alignment, the total solar eclipse, and the Perseid peak within roughly a day of each other. 2:15. Although the exact alignment has passed, you can still catch Perseid D meteors as they streak across the sky, especially in the late night to pre-dawn hours over the next few days. Times of 15. There are also more subtle targets to watch. On the morning of August 14, Mars stood within about a degree of the open cluster M35 in Gemini, offering a nice binocular pairing of a reddish planet and a loose star cluster at the feet of the twins. Near sunrise, Mercury passed close to M44, the Beehive cluster in Cancer, another conjunction that rewards observers using binoculars or a small telescope. These close approaches are fleeting, but they illustrate how the planets constantly weave through the backdrop of stars, creating new compositions night after night. Together, Venus's brilliant display, the fading yet still lively Perseids, and the planetary pairings make this weekend a good time to step outside and reconnect with the night sky. Before we wrap up, it is worth circling back to how today's stories fit together. On the one hand, we have deeply technical observations from space telescopes, like the James Webb discovery of a barred spiral galaxy in the young universe, nudging our theories of how galaxies grow and organize themselves. U17. On the other hand, we have very human-scale experiences of space, such as watching Venus and the Moon after sunset or standing under a recent total solar eclipse and feeling the temperature drop. (2000 Series 7 Interceptor, or standing under terrestrial aspects of space. Rockets delivering satellites, solar activity affecting communications, and navigation systems being refreshed for everyday use. What 7816s? What ties all of this together is the sense that space is not a distant, occasional topic, but an ongoing presence in daily life. The GPS satellite launched from Florida contributes to the positioning data your phone relies on, even if you never think about the rocket that put it there. Tabir's 8 solar filaments and flares can color the sky in disturbed technology, reminding us that Earth's environment is part of a larger, changing system governed by the sun. Tabir 16s. And images of the ISS crossing the eclipsed sun invite us to see human engineering as one element in a much grander cosmic scene. Tabir's mine. As you listen to these updates, you might notice that many of them come back to perspective. Space can be something you study through data and models, something you feel emotionally when you see the corona or an aurora, or something you rely on each time you navigate or communicate. 2 2's third, 11 2/16. The news today spans all three, showing how discoveries, events, and infrastructure share the same cosmic stage. With that in mind, let us move toward closing today's episode, carrying a slightly wider view of how the universe and our own planet's activities are intertwined. Thanks to our sponsor, Crisp Call. Crisp Call provides agentic cloud telephony for modern businesses. Find the link in the episode notes. That brings us to the end of today's journey through the latest space and astronomy news. We started with a galaxy in the early universe that seems to have grown up faster than expected, a barred spiral that challenges our timelines for how structure emerges in cosmic history. New 17. We checked in on the sun's mood and its potential to paint the sky with auroras, revisited the shadow path of a total solar eclipse now enriched by fresh images, and noted how launch pads in Florida continue to feed both experimental networks and the everyday navigation systems we rely on. We also looked ahead to what you can see for yourself, Venus glowing near the evening moon, lingering meteors from the Perseid shower, and planet cluster pairings that make binocular observing surprisingly rewarding. 2013. All of these stories serve as reminders that space is not only for scientists and engineers. It is part of the environment we live in and, for many, a source of wonder. You have been listening to the Automated Daily Space News Edition, created by generative AI and hosted by Trendteller. If you enjoyed this calm, fact-focused walk through today's cosmic headlines, consider sharing the show with someone who might appreciate a little more space in their daily routine. Until next time, keep looking up when you can. Stay curious about what is happening beyond our atmosphere, and take care.